And one of the lyrics of that song has kind of been the thing I've realized over time is like the enterprise of the church somehow is that we've got this God who kind of hides himself to tease us. And then you got to figure out which church to go to, which can best figure out how he's hidden and reveal it to you, because he's like this big cosmic guy in the sky that just says you like need to come to church to figure me out, or you need the best pastor to figure me out, or whatever, that he's just playing tease with us. We're little pawns, and we're on this little secret mission, and I thought I was there, and I'm not there, and I'm just going to hide you, and the smartest and the brightest and the best person can find you. I mean, he doesn't hide himself, like he's not here to tease us. And as we engage the text for this morning, it's a common text, and I hope you're at the 9 o'clock service. I hope it doesn't make you hungry to talk about fish and chips. I grew up in the Midwest. I don't know if this is true, what it was in the South. I didn't move to the South till I was into my 20s, but I grew up and there was like this thing in the Midwest called Arthur Treacher's Fish and Chips. I don't know if that was in the South, but it was in the North. And I'm sure it wasn't good because it was like all breaded and stuff, but it was good. And then like Captain D's came along, Long John Silver's. I mean, you had all these little fish fast food restaurants. But I guess if you lived in the other side of the pond, fish and chips are kind of the normal view of lunch or life that you do there. And honestly, I just make up sermon titles, honestly. Yeah, they're catchy. They may make you pay attention. But, we're at a point in Scripture, if you've been in the church any time, where Jesus feeds 5,000 people with 5 loaves and 2 fish. And I think one of the things I'm going to try to draw out today is there's so much more to this miracle. I believe, I could be wrong about this, I believe this feeding of the 5,000, all 4 of the gospel writes. It's uncommon. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, that there's events in all 4 of them that they cover, but I believe this is one of them. And I think we sometimes concentrate on the miracle, and honestly, I engage certain things as I prepare each week. And wow, one of the ones I typically engage this text in a way that it was powerful for me. It was powerful to where we're even at Nature Coast. I might draw out on some of that today. Given the context, the disciples have gone out 2 by 2. They've done some great things, and they've come back to Jesus. I've never heard this text this way, but Jesus, as his disciples come back all excited about what they've done, is actually teaching us something about the church and what the vision of the church is, and what it does. So anyway, I'm not gonna read it all the way through to begin with. I'm just gonna open up and just go right through it. So just put up the first slide, and we're gonna talk about the first slide. The apostles gathered around Jesus and reported to him all they'd done and taught. So they'd gone out. Jesus sent the disciples out, and this is Mark chapter 6 and 2 by 2. And they are excited. They have come back, reported all that they had done. And so they had preached the good news. They had cast out demons. They had done all of this, and they reported all that they'd done and taught. Then, because so many people were coming, so whatever they had done had gained attention. It had gone viral in our day. They've gone viral. Whatever they had done, many people were coming and going. They didn't even have a chance to eat. I mean, people were clamoring for them, and he said to them, "Come with me." And I think this is important, by yourselves to a quiet place and get some rest. So they went away, you just leave it on this slide. They went away by themselves in a boat to a wilderness place, to a desolate place, to a place where there was no life. Yeah, sometimes I think we live our lives and there's never any rest. There's never any rest. People clamor for our attention. Our families clamor for our attention. Our vocation clamors for our attention. And Jesus offers his self and his disciples a place of rest. You know, busyness has become kind of a mark of our worthiness. I mean, have you ever had someone come up to you and say, "How you doing?" You know, the last answer you want to give them is, "Well, I've not really been doing anything lately." I mean, one of the common answers is life is just so busy. You can be a parent, could be your job. But at least in our culture, there is some value in that there's some worth, that the busier you are, the more important you are, right? I mean, try to give an answer. "Well, I'm not doing really much this week." "Brad, what do you do this week?" Well, I rested. I went to a Desiplate and rested." "Oh, okay. I wish I could do that." Our value, even in our culture, is given to our busyness. And almost if you're at rest, there's actually something wrong with you. And yet, in the midst of that, are we really at rest? I mean, even in our busyness or even in our non-busyness, you know what? In all of my years of ministry, I have yet to find a vision statement, a life coach, or a 5-year plan, or a lifestyle change, or even a meditation app that has been effective enough to relieve me of my fear, anxiety, my worries, and my regret. Listen, Nature Coast could come up with a 5-year plan. It will not remove you from your anxiety, fear, and regrets of your life. Our mission statement won't. A 5-year plan into the future. It may have some helpfulness to us and to you or to Nature Coast, but it will not relieve us of our fear and our anxiety. We're just an anxious culture. This week was VBS. I'm going to use this in both services to brag on us a little bit. You know, VBS on its surface is hard and it's tiring. There's kids here all week long. And yet our one goal of every VBS is to offer these students that come rest and freedom. Can I just say that I would say of all the years I've done it, I've not really done it. I've experienced it, usually here in the morning and listen to their opening thing and then move on to my day. Is the feeling of rest that was here. There's something about rest, even in the midst of the busyness of many children, that can actually come. We were here to offer the children rest, and to a certain extent, I began to realize this week that the only way we can offer them at rest is to present ourselves, even those who are working and being at stations and doing those things, as a place of rest. To be at rest. Be at rest in the midst of busyness, to be at rest in the midst of a lot going on. How can you have a VBS of at least 40 students here with volunteers who are here and yet present this place where every kid that came back, every kid that came back day after day after day, and they wanted to come. You know, it's a sign of a good VBS when the kids want to come back, and the same kids that were here on Monday are here on Friday. Why? Is it because we just ran a great program? Maybe. Maybe not. Maybe there is something in the midst of busyness, in the midst of volunteers who are not worried about whether they're doing it right or whether they're doing it wrong, that says something to little children's hearts who live in a world where everybody is worried about whether they are doing it right or doing it wrong. So even as we come to this text, it's been the battle of my heart. You know, I know the goal of the Christian life is freedom and rest, and for many years of my life I haven't experienced this. This is a deeply personal message for me. I have an agony for freedom. I have an agony for rest. It's almost like in the church that if you experience freedom and rest, there's something wrong with you. So you're in a real battle when you're in the church. You're in a real battle for freedom and rest because the church itself is built on paradigms to act like the most spiritual you are is the more you won't be at rest, the more you will be worried, the more you will be agonized, the more you will be all of this stuff. It's a battle in the Church of Christ to be at freedom and rest. It's been my own personal battle. And yet in Nature Coast, I've tasted of it. And yet, even as I've tasted of it, I feel the anxiousness that somehow I'm supposed to feel guilty if I feel free and I feel at rest. Because to feel at rest and to feel free means that you maybe don't care or you're not as intense enough. And yet Jesus comes and he pulls his disciples away after they've been out and about to a wilderness, a place where there is no life, for rest. So the disciples and Jesus, they need to get some rest. So they went away by themselves in a boat to a wilderness place. Next slide. But many who saw them leaving recognized them, and they beat them to where they were going. They beat them to where they were going. You get this picture in this text of these people are desperate. Jesus and his disciples have gone viral. Jesus and disciples have gone and they've offered and they've casted out demons and they've forgiven sins and they've done all of these things and they have gone viral. And these people, this is verse 33 is a picture of people who are desperate. They're desperate. They're desperate for another word from Christ. They're desperate for they're desperate for freedom. They're desperate for rest. They're desperate selfishly. Jesus, the disciples went out healing. Jesus has been healing. They're desperate to gain an advantage in their life, and they think Jesus, he's gone viral because if they can just attach themselves to Jesus, they can gain some advantage in their life. So they leave on this boat to go to a place of rest. But then in verse 33, we see the people realize where they're going. They beat them to the place of rest. And when Jesus lands, they're already there. They haven't come to it. They're in that sense is a never place of rest. But what I think Jesus is going to teach us is even though a large crowd is there, there is still this idea that you can be at rest, that your hunger can be satisfied, that your thirst can be quenched, even in the midst of crowds. Even in the midst of people, even in the midst of people bearing in on them, Jesus saw them and them leaving and but Jesus landed and he saw a large crowd. And you know, what did Jesus do? He and the disciples had got on a place in a boat, and they wanted rest. They wanted to go to a desolate place, and they ended up going to this place that they thought would be a wilderness place, but there's a lot of people there. And you know what you and I would do? And frankly, this is what the disciples did. Oh, I'm going on vacation. I'm going to get away from it all. And then you show up on vacation, and look who's there. The same people you thought you had left. When Jesus landed and he saw the large crowd, he had what? Compassion on their hungers, their thirsts, and their desires. Because they were a sheep without a shepherd. That's the core verse in all of this. The one engagement I had this week, and I'm going to touch on it. I'm not going to go into it deeply. But in a way, Jesus is talking and setting the tone for what the church should be. The Church of Jesus Christ. It's kind of in technical terms, an ecclesiology passage. And as I listened to this week and engaged even in this particular thought on it, I thought, my God, this is what the passion is for here. The passion of Nature Coast. Because the underlying reality of Jesus in the crowds is compassion for people who seem scattered and aimless. This is what the church is about. Jesus is beginning to teach what the church is about. Jesus landed, he saw a large crowd. He had compassion on them because they were like sheep without a shepherd, and began to teach them many things. You can go to the next slide. Why are they sheep without a shepherd? Why is there no rest? Why, when you just even think of church, do you think of church as a place of rest? I hope you do at Nature Coast. But generally speaking, do you think of the church as a place of rest? Why is the church seemingly like the not place of rest? Like, I don't even want to go this morning because I'm just going to feel anxious when I leave. Right? I think what Jesus is teaching is we foundationally do church wrong. Why do we assemble as a church? Why do you think the church is a church? What does it mean to be a church? Why do we assemble to the church? And I think even as he uses language from the Old Testament, they're sheep without a shepherd. That's from the book of Ezekiel. He gathers them. Psalm 23, the shepherd imagery is all over. Psalm 23, the Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. And Jesus and the disciples come back and they're all excited and they've had this power, and Jesus is actually teaching here what this power is and how that power is to be used. But I think sometimes when we think of church and Jesus is contrasting himself by gathering them as sheep without a shepherd and putting them in 50s and 100s, which will go into the book of Numbers and everything like that he's not Moses. That this gathering of the crowds, this gathering of sheep, this gathering of people who are gathered by the people of God are not gathered according to Moses. They're not gathered according to the law. That's the passion of my heart that I'm trying to shatter. Some people go to this texting 50 and hundreds and whatever and say that Jesus somehow has this top-down approach of shepherding, this top-down approach of gathering people into 50s and hundreds and all of those things. And Jesus is coming, and Jesus says, saying that the posture of the church is to have compassion. That's what rules the church, compassion. Compassion. This guttural reality that as we look at each other, as we look at the Nature Coast, that our guttural response as the crowds come and what it means to be the church is compassion. Compassion. He looked over the church and had compassion on it. And yet, why do we assemble? I came from a denomination that marked the church not with compassion, but with, someone said, rules. Yes. You know how we create our churches? According to the law. According to the law. That's how we have assembled our churches. So it was fascinating to me this week as I listened. I could resonate with it. I'm a shepherd. And guess what? As a shepherd, according to the law, or according to how we view church, that makes me the chief supervisor. I kid you not, in the last month, I asked to go out to breakfast with someone who is fairly new here. I just want to go to breakfast. I want to get to know people. She sends me a note back. Why do you want to go to breakfast with me? What have I done wrong? I meant to copy her note for my notes. Those were her exact words to me. I've just viewed church as you're the principal, and if you want to have breakfast with me, it means you got something to tell me. You got something to fix about my life. I kid you not. That's the posture of the church at large. It's not the posture that Christ wants to get. The shepherd is the supervisor. I'm the principal. I'm the person people come to tattle to. Did you know about Nikki Nero? Did you see her post on Facebook this week? Which one, she said. That's church according to the law. We assume that church is the place where someone needs to stand over you. And when we read the thing that they are a sheep without a shepherd, we view it as they need a ruler. They need a shepherd. They need a ruler. They need someone to organize around. You need a group of people. You need a group of elders who you organize around, who determine the rules and then determine who is in and who is out. And Jesus says, no way. The church of Jesus Christ is a place that looks at people not with trying to figure out who's in and who's out, but has compassion on them, has compassion on the crowds. The church of Jesus Christ is not a place that's looking for a general. To figure out who's in and out. That's according to law. And the law ended in Christ. And after this week, and after even being fed by others, I am more determined that the structures that have bound the Church of Jesus Christ as an organization have been from the pit of hell. Because Jesus said this is the church of Christ. It looks out and it has compassion on everyone it sees. This week, our kids sang a song, talked about the enemy bringing us down by reminding us of our sins, talked about the devil and his work in our life by reminding of our sins. That's true. That's what the devil does. He tries to remind us of our sins. But here's the thing. Forget the devil. Forget the devil. I don't need the devil to remind me of my sins. We have the church, right? That's what the role of the church is, right? You don't even want to read my notes because I was upset because the kids were so experienced that I said, we're worried about the enemy. How about the blanking church? It's right here in my notes. You can't read it. I mean, we live in a church environment where everyone is trying to find out who to blame for this and who to blame for that. I mean, the church, honestly, is the last place you try to find compassion, right? Who's to blame for this? Who's to blame with that? What's wrong from the church? Even the danger of what we've done here with pods is the pods become the generals, and you'd go to the pods to report to the generals. People are doing it wrong. We've made our shepherds generals. And yet when I look at this week at Bible school and I look at Nature Coast and I look at this morning, what would it be like to find a church where you actually see something that's amiss, there's a hole or something is broken, and instead of trying to find the general, you just go do it yourself. You just go fix it yourself. And then you come to church without anybody knowing, with a smile on your face, knowing that something was possibly fell through the cracks. And you did it. That's Nature Coast, by the way. It happened this morning. I mean, honestly, maybe not needed or whatever, but it happened this morning. Someone saw something that needed done, and instead of reporting to the general, they just went out and did it. They just went out and did it. And you'll never know who it is, because I'm not going to mention it this morning. They're here, sitting right now. And you all enjoyed the benefits of it. You all enjoyed the benefits of it. That is the church of Christ. When you see something broken and your response is compassion. It's compassion. The disciples, they got it all wrong. By this time, it was late in the day, so his disciples were so much like his disciples. They came to him and said, this is a wilderness place. This is a place where there is no life. And it's already very late. Send the people away so that they can go to the surrounding countrysides and villages and buy themselves something to eat. Let's give them instruction and let them go fix the problem. We're in a desolate place, and there's a McDonald's in Homosassa. Can we just send them to McDonald's? They may not know where it is. We'll give them instructions. That's the way we view church. That's my role. Somehow I'm supposed to just give you instructions and then let you go home and fix yourselves. I'll just tell you where McDonald's is. I'll tell you where to eat. That's the role of pastor, right? I just tell you where to eat. You're hungry? Well, they're downtown 19. We actually got options. You can go to Burger King. You can go to Papa John's. You can go in Homosassa here. Wendy's, Kim's, Luigi's, Hardee's, McDonald's, Taco Bell. You can go to Racetrack or 7-Eleven now. You got a problem? You seem a little bit at loss? I just give you some instruction. That's my role. To just give you some instruction. so that you can go somewhere else and figure out yourself, how to fix yourself. See if you can apply it. The disciples, Jesus is pointing something out because they go by for themselves. We learn there's 5,000 people. But Jesus said to him, like, well, you feed them. Like, you feed them. That's a joke. The disciples can't feed him. I can't feed you. That would take more than a half year's wages. Are we to go spend that much money on bread and give them to eat? Next slide. And how many loaves do you have? And they said, well, we'll go and see. And Jesus found out they have 5 loaves and 2 fish, which is basically saying they have nothing to feed 5,000 people. We live in a culture of not enough money, not enough food in the church, not enough volunteers. And the very fact that we live in a church disappointed in others means that we actually look at each other as the place that we're going to find rest. By the end of this story, there's only one person that can give rest, and his name is Jesus. That's it. There's never going to be enough volunteers, not enough pods, not enough of anything, not enough money. I mean, the psalm for this week was Psalm 23. I will say Psalm 23, the Lord is my shepherd, I will not want. But when it comes to church finances, I don't believe that. The Lord is our shepherd. He's not of want of volunteers. He's not of want of money. He's not of want of anything. He's of want of our need of him. That's it. Period. God's got it. God's got Nature Coast. And if there is anything that was the flavor of Nature Coast that you could just feel permeating this week in the midst of really, I felt like we had plenty of volunteers. We had plenty of people doing things. But even in the midst of plenty of volunteers and doing things, God's got it. And you know what? Every one of the students here felt that this week, which is why they came back, because they could taste something different here than anywhere else. A place free of anxiety, free of whether it's done right or not. You can go to the last slide. Jesus directed, then taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish and looking up to heaven, he gave thanks and broke the loaves. He gave it to disciples and they ate and they were satisfied. You want to be satisfied? Jesus satisfies. He's the only one that does. We're seeking for rest and we're seeking for more and we're seeking for security. And he is just saying, hear my words. I've got it. We are people of an old story. And this shepherd who looked with compassion, he feeds, he satisfies. And they are as sheep without a shepherd because the religious people of the day were not offering them rest and were not offering them freedom. And the question I have, I guess, for us is, are you offering people rest? Is that what you're offering people? I think Nature Coast this week said, yes, that's what we're offering. We're offering rest, but you can only offer rest to the point that you've experienced God's rest that he's given you, which is why I give you that week after week. I'm not going to give you a to-do list. I'm going to tell you that God is for you, and he's got you, and he will never leave you and never forsake you, and he has given that rest so that you can give that rest to other people. Do you offer people rest? Can they feel that around you? We have a passion here for good news to go viral. And this week it did to kids. Where does God want us? He wants us to the point where we can't feed ourselves. That we're like these people, hungry and unsatisfied. And the only way that hunger can be satisfied is through the voice and the words and the blessing and the prayer of a Father who can take something that seems like nothing and is nothing and multiply it in our lives. You know, powerlessness is terrifying. We don't want, as an American culture, ever to be powerless, but it's where God is 100% of the time, in our powerlessness. Martin Luther's last words of his life as he passed into the arms of Jesus were this: we are beggars. This is true. That is resting in peace. And it is the place that you will find rest, and I will find rest. We are beggars. This is true. Rest in that peace. The devil and maybe the church. And the truth is, well, he said we don't need the devil. It's still the devil's words, even if it comes from religious people. But we are beggars. This is true. And that is our hope and our rest. How can we keep from singing his praise? Let's stand and close our worship here this morning.